Okay, here we are in the next one. Let's actually get started making our calculator. So the first thing we should do whenever we're starting a new project where we're building something is go do a little research, see what's out there for things that already exist. So I use Google's calculator all the time. If I just do 10 plus 10, we can see there's this whole calculator here. Or if we search for like math calculator online, we'll probably come up with all kinds of them, and there's all kinds of complicated ones out there. Look at all this stuff going on. But let's look at them and let's, first of all, think about them, knowing what we know about HTML. So imagine little blocks. So there's a block here, and this is some kind of input. Then there's buttons, and these are probably in little blocks, or there's probably a block for this whole thing. And then this whole row or these columns are in blocks. They're somehow organized so that they all sit on top of each other and they have this nice spacing. And now if we actually inspect, we'll see, okay, there's a bunch of divs. There's this thing called a table, which we didn't go over and we're actually going to skip for now, but they are using it here. There's more divs and divs and divs and divs, and they're not actually using buttons. So, oh man, do we even need to use buttons? So there's so many ways to build things in HTML. You're sometimes going to run into weird stuff, but you can still get the rough idea of structure from this. Now let's go to this one and inspect a little and see how they're building it. And we can see here that they also are using all these divs. There's a div for every one of the buttons, and each of the buttons is just a div. It's not actually a button element. It's just that. And we have things in rows here. Each of them are in rows, and they go all the way through rows, and the whole thing is in a big box. So, okay, other people aren't using buttons. We're going to use it just because we want to demonstrate using buttons, but you don't have to. And we can see people put them in rows, and there's different kinds of ways of organizing this stuff. So, you know, we wanted to look just a little to see like what's out there and to get used to the idea of looking at these kind of things. So first of all, let's change our header. We're going to change it to be, you know, Mapster calculator. That's what I'm going to call it. And we're going to say this calculator will be our first go at HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in web development. Okay, great. We save that. It appears there. Great, we're already on our way. Now, we're going to make some buttons. So what do we want our buttons to be? So we want our buttons to be all the different numbers and all the different stuff that people are going to be putting in. So we're going to have a button that is 1. Obviously, we're going to have a button that is 2. And now that we have these 2 buttons, we can save, and we see they appear here. Okay, that's nice. They're right next to each other. And then we can just paste them, copy paste. We can go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then of course we also need a button for 0. So that's all useful. Save that. We see they're all here. Okay, great. Now we're also going to want a button for plus, for minus, for multiply, and for divide. We're also going to want one for equals, and then we're going to want a clear button. We see that on all these examples. They have all the numbers. They also have a decimal place. They have equals, plus, minus, blah, 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 and they have AC. Then there's all this other crap. We're not going to get into those hyper complicated calculators, obviously. We're just trying to build this simpler one. Another reason why it's good to look at examples. So, okay, we have all these buttons here. Okay, so one other thing we wanted to make was an input. So we want to input type text. And we can just put that there, and this will be something to do with where the user will like enter numbers. Okay, so now we want to use divs a little to start breaking this up. So I want to put this whole thing in a div to kind of keep the whole calculator in one big basket where it's all together. That doesn't change anything. Now I also want to put this input in its own little basket so that later I can style it a special way. Okay, that's nice too. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm also going to put all the buttons in their own little baskets. Now, I could do it where I just put the numbers in a basket, like this, and then put all the operations in another basket. That's totally fine too, depending how I want to organize it. But you can see it's kind of, we're getting to be able to organize things a certain way. Now, I probably want, when I look at these, I see that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like that. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 along the bottom like that. That seems to be a pretty standard way that people do these kinds of calculators. So maybe I'll want to reorganize that where the 1, 2, 3s will actually be along the button bottom, and then the 4, 5, 6, and then the 7, 8, 9, and the 0 would be in some other place, maybe it's in its own div, the 0. Let's do that and see how this all looks. Okay, so we have this 1, 2, 3, but they're still not in a line. So we can put that again in another little div. So you can see how we're nesting things. We're trying to break them up according to what groups we want to have them appear in. And then we have another div here. Okay. And we end up with something that looks like those calculators. And then this is kind of weird. It's not on the right side. I think that probably this could be its own, the equals and the C are kind of different than the operations. So we have this rough layout of our calculator now. So this is a great starting point. We've used H1 tags. We've used attributes here in our input. We've used divs to do all kinds of nesting to make it kind of look in a rough way like we saw. We used buttons, although they don't do anything yet. And we used some basic tags like H1 and P tags. So great job getting this far. Now, next we're going to start getting into CSS, which is going to let us style this a bit more. Like, how do we get these pieces to be on the side like we see here, right? How do we make these buttons look a little nicer? How do we change the font? How do we color these or put space between them? This is the kind of stuff that CSS is really going to let us do, changing the background of the page, changing text color, all the fun stuff that makes a page look nice. And then once we get past that, we'll get into the JavaScript part, which will be actually making it work and do something. So we'll see you in the next one. Great job so far.